Last episode, we started counting down my top 5 favorite games of all time. And this episode of Brains on Games, we're going to talk about the top 3. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we're going to crack the top 3 of my top 5 favorite games of all time. So let's talk about the number 3 game. And like I said in the last episode, if you haven't peeked at it yet, in the last episode I mentioned that my top 5 might be, it's always in flux. It depends on the mood that I happen to be in, but we are talking about games that I have had the greatest experiences playing with my family. So with that out of the way, let's talk about my number 3 game of all time.
Number 3.
The only dexterity game on the list, although I do love dexterity games, it is an old game called Crokinole. Let me pick up my Crokinole board. This thing is gigantic, so it's kind of heavy and large. Let me see if I can get it up there. Well, you might have to see some pictures of it. I might put up some graphics of this beautiful thing. This is a board, a tournament-sized Crokinole board that I picked up from a local crafter. Basically, perfect.ca is their website. But this is just a gorgeous game. One of the reasons why I wanted to have a Crokinole board at home, I honestly wanted to have a pool table, but pool tables do take up a lot of space. You really do need a dedicated space for a pool table, and I didn't want to take up my entire game room with a pool table. But I think that Crokinole was the next best thing, and then I wound up enjoying Crokinole even more than I like pool. This is a beautiful game when you get the right board. It's a beautiful game, and I was lucky enough recently to find a mounting system. So now I'm able to get it out of the way and hang it up on the wall. So this thing is like a piece of art, and I'll try and find some other photos of boards from Basically Perfect, who, like I said, these guys are local. So I was excited to track them down online. So it's a dexterity game where players are typically you'd be playing with 2 players, and you're going to be flicking these discs across the board, trying to earn the most points. The first player to 100 points wins. We've been using poker chips to keep track of those points. I have dice in the bag as well, 2 10-sided dice, so that each in the same colors as the discs that I have. So there's some black discs and some black dice and some blue discs and blue dice in this bag. And you're just flicking discs across the board, trying to get close to the center. You can create blockers. There's these pins here that are in the way, and they are quite bouncy. If you give it a good flick, they are quite bouncy. Sorry for the racket, but if you've got a good board that has some good action, this is a game that is just so much fun. Everybody wants to watch you play. You'll be cheering when an amazing shot happens, and you'll be very disappointed when you're just not quite able to thread the needle and do what you want, make that disc do what you want it to do. But boy, oh boy, when you've got pieces laid out and you just make an amazing shot, Crokinole is a special game. And we've always had great experiences playing it. I did a video about Crokinole way back when. I talked about Crokinole and Bino, which is another great flicking game. But Crokinole is definitely my favorite. I mean, it's in my top 5 of all. It's number 3 in the top 5 games of all time. And it is a game, I don't know if I said this on the video before, but I know I've told my dad before that I'm not a guy who goes out to wax his car, but I do regularly wax my Crokinole board to make sure that it's nice and slippery for those discs to slide across the board. So Crokinole is definitely in my top 5. Sometimes it's higher than number 3, but for today's video, it's my number 3 favorite game.
Number 2.
Number 2 on my list of top 5 favorite games is another sort of Euro-style strategy game. One of, I think, the best strategy games of all time for reasons that we'll talk about. It is Concordia. Now, the version I have is Concordia Venus. I think that's the one now that you can get. Venus was an expansion to the original Concordia, but now you get the base game and the Venus expansion together in one box. And it is a big box with a big board. Here you'll only be able to see a little part of it because I've kind of kept it folded up so that I had enough room to show some things. But it's another one of those economic games where what you're doing is you're traveling around this map of Greece or other parts of Europe, and you're establishing trading houses. So each of the cities is going to have some logo on it where it tells you what resource you're going to collect if you produce resources in that city. And you're moving these little meeples around, or you've got sailboats as well. And what you're trying to do is build trading houses that are going to allow you to collect those resources. You can sell and buy resources, and you're collecting cards. There's a deck building element to it as well. So you're creating trade routes, and you're buying these cards that are going to allow you to take actions. So you start with all of these cards in your hand and you discard them to do an action in the game. And that is really the, I think, unique element here. So it's action selection, but you've got all of these cards in your hand and you're going to discard them to do that action, maybe to build a trade house or to produce resources or to trade goods, whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then you can't take that action again until you collect your cards back. So every player has a card that allows them to collect their discard pile and take it back into their hand. But you earn more money if you're collecting more cards. So you don't want to keep playing that and using your action to take the cards back. Anyway, it's just a brilliant, brilliant mechanism. And it is also clear because exactly what you're doing is explained, it's described on the card. You don't need a giant rule book to play this game. It does not take very long to learn the basics, but it is very strategic. And so you will find yourself, okay, well, I understand how to play this now, but you may not understand how to win until you've played it half a dozen times. So it's got the trading and the trade routes. There are all of these multiple maps. These maps are double-sided, and different maps are better for different play counts. So you can have a nice crowded map when you're only playing 2 players, or a great big one for 5 players. So it's very, very flexible. Of course, we've upgraded all the resources. So we've got bolts of cloth here and little containers for the wine in the game. You've got wheat and iron tools really that you might be collecting, and bricks, of course, as well. And these resources are going to allow you to do some other things. The other thing that's neat about the game is that you don't count up your points until the end. So you can sort of tell from looking at the trade routes, what people are and what cards people are collecting into their hand, what they're going for, but you don't really know what the score is until the end of the game. Beginners can do kind of at the halfway point. They can count up their score to see where things are and where everybody stands, but you don't really know until the end, which I really liked. And it winds up being a game where you're pulling these cards into your hand that are going to give you, into your deck, that are going to give you points at the end of the game. It really is the deck building that's the most important. But that deck also gives you more options in terms of what you can do on your turn, because those cards are going to come into your hand and each of those cards gives you some action. So you might be trying to collect all of the cards that are about having a trading house in each province of the board, or having multiple trading houses in each province of the board. And then it's just a fantastic game. And because the actions are so clearly explained on these cards, like, you don't need to understand any crazy iconography. The pictures on the little city tiles are very clear what you're producing. There's a picture of a brick, so you're going to get a brick for that one. I didn't pull out a tools resource here, but it looks like an anvil instead of looking like this iron ingot that I have here. It just makes it easy to explain. So it's very, very strategic, but new players can pick it up fairly quickly. And it's one that gets pulled out at our house when someone wants to play a more advanced or complicated strategy game, but they're just learning and you don't want to spend an hour explaining the rules or watching a video to learn how to play. So Concordia, I think, is just perfect for that reason. It's a great introduction to complicated sort of Euro strategy games. It's a nice economic economic game where you're building trade routes and you're moving things around the board. And then if you've got those upgraded resources, you're playing with your toys as well.
Number 1.
And that brings us to my favorite game of all time. Now, it might not have the highest ranking on Board Game Geek or whatever, but this is a game that I've played again and again, and I've had such good experiences, so much fun to play with my kids, this game. And it's a game called, you're going to hear it rattling around here because all of the tiles are inside the box. A game called The Duke. Now, this is not the original box. I had a custom box made because we had so many expansions, they wouldn't all fit in the original box. So I'll put up a graphic of what the Duke box looks like. This is, sorry, it's rattling here, but this is, I think, one of the first videos I made on the channel was about the Duke because it is a game that I love so much. And it's a game that I love partly because it's small enough and it doesn't take up too much space on the table, and you can play it. It's a 2-player game. And when my son was at soccer practice, his younger brother would be with me, and often we would sit at a table somewhere and play the Duke. It's a game that doesn't blow away because all the pieces are made of wood. And so we would play this at restaurants. We would play it on picnic tables near the soccer field. Whenever there was a soccer practice, we had, I carried a copy of the Duke around in the trunk of my car for years. Honestly, just so that we would be able to pull it out and play at any given time. Let me open this up and I'll show you what the Duke is all about. So the Duke is a game, it's a little like chess. That's how it was sort of introduced to us. I think we were at Comic-Con or something, a local Comic-Con, and we went to the game table area where people were playing board games, and my son was with his friend, and we had played some other games, but his friend liked chess. And so we said to the guy who was running the joint, what's a game that someone who enjoys chess would enjoy trying out? And this was the game that got pulled out. So it is a chess-like kind of a game, but it's just brilliant in the way that it works, because you've got these tiles, but each tile has a grid that shows how it moves. So this one can move forward or backward or from side to side one space. You start the game with a Duke and 2 footmen, and then you've got a bag full of these other tiles. On your turn, you can either move a piece or pull a piece at random out of the bag and put it onto the board next to your Duke. Always has to be next to the Duke unless you have some special ability that allows you to do it a different way. There are expansions that replace some of the tiles, or that you can allow you to draw, that allow you to replace the tiles that you've drawn. There are characters from movies. Conan, we've got a Conan expansion. We've got King Arthur. There's a King Arthur expansion. That's why I needed so much room. You can see here, I needed so much room for all of these pieces that wouldn't fit in the original box. So we've got the 3 Musketeers, and we've got siege engines. There's a catapult in there somewhere. But the idea here is that, I've got things placed in the wrong spot here now. The idea is that you're either moving your piece or you're drawing a new piece out of the bag and putting it on the board beside your Duke. Once you move it, you flip it over, and now it moves in a different way. So again, it's just brilliant. You've got to plan ahead how you're going to move these things. One of the variants, the main way that you're going to play this game, is that you're trying to capture the opponent's Duke. And the Duke can move all the way from one side of the board to the other, or all the way back and forth, depending on which side of the piece is facing up. So you're trying to capture the opponent's Duke, but there are variations in the rules where you're playing capture the flag, or there's a dragon in the middle of the field that's going to go back and forth and really take some of your pieces off the board if you get too close, or if you're in the wrong place. You've got just these great pieces in here that allow you to move in all different ways. You can jump over, some of the pieces can jump over other players, some of the pieces can slide all the way across the board, but you're not always going to have the same pieces on the board at any given time because you're pulling them at random from this bag. So you start out with everything except for your Duke and 2 footmen in here, and you go from there. Like I said, there are some variations that allow you to do different things. You might draw one out and have to replace it. You might put different pieces in your bag depending on if you're playing with the Robin Hood expansion, or the 3 Musketeers, or Conan the Barbarian, because there's a Robert E. Howard expansion as well. So it is a game that I just have nothing but fond memories of playing. And I didn't, even though I was playing against my son when he was young, I didn't always win. He is really good at those spatial games. And one thing I can say about these kinds of more advanced strategy games, especially games like this where it is quite abstract and spatial, is that for my son at least, he always had that skill, and these games allowed him to kind of experience those feelings, that feeling of mastery, that feeling of, oh, this is something that I'm good at. And I think through playing these games, he's developed this sense of himself as a guy who has kind of an engineering brain. He's wired to see things in this. He had a natural talent at this, but it was a natural talent that kept building and building and developing through playing games that forced him to. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I did this. I started this channel, is that it's through practicing that skill, you're kind of developing and reinforcing those abilities by playing this game. And gradually he developed a sense of himself as a person who had strong spatial skills, who was very good at visual problem solving, who was excellent at thinking ahead and anticipating what the other player was going to do. And he could lay traps for me, because that's not the way my brain works. So he could lay traps for me on the board. He knew how I was going to react a lot of the time. And then he would just, sometimes it was frustrating for me, because here I am playing against this little kid. And sometimes he would just wipe the floor with me with these kinds of games. But the Duke was the one that did really start it all, I would say. And really help my son to develop a sense of himself as someone who had those kinds of skills. And now he's doing computer programming, engineering kinds of stuff. I can't say that I owe it all to the fact that we've played these kinds of games, because I'm certain that he was sort of wired that way genetically. But experience also plays a role. And this was something, he wasn't just doing hands-on things. He wasn't just doing sports. He certainly wasn't only playing video games, although that was something that he still loves to do. But we did play the Duke a lot. And those kinds of games, I think, encouraged him to see himself in a certain way. And that set him on a pathway. And now he's taking courses that he really loves. He's getting in touch almost every day to tell me what he learned about at school. Because I like technology and computers, but I don't know the things that he's learning about. I'm not a programmer. It's just a game that we've had nothing but great experiences with. And that's why the Duke is number one in my book. I think Tabletop Bellhop really likes the Duke as well, so I'll give him a shout out too. I don't know if it's his favorite game of all time, but certainly just the ability to lug it around with you wherever you go, to have it in the back seat of your car, in the trunk of your car, and to pull it out, because you're not playing with cards and pieces that are going to blow around. I can't say enough good things about the Duke, and that's why the Duke is my number one favorite game of all time. Just like I said last time, if you have suggestions, if you want to talk about your favorite games, if you want to give me suggestions for games that I should play that maybe are similar to the Duke or one of the other ones that we've talked about here in the top 5, I have hundreds of games back here, but I haven't played every game ever made. You can leave those comments and suggestions in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed. So we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.